It is my distinct privilege to introduce to you a giant in the insurance industry who's actually affecting this transformation. The president of the Insurance and Business Process Solutions for DXC, Ray August. Now, there's a big difference here. Not only his background, you could say 30 years of transformation, of having done that at PwC, having done that at Microsoft, now doing it for DXC, CSC, obviously the precursor. But I ask you, you would say many giants we have seen and all those other things. I'll ask you a mathematical question. How many of them are actually achieving 7x improvement in containment? 7x. 700%, that is, improvement in containment. How many of them are achieving a 6-fold improvement in their IVR authentication? And how many of them are achieving a 20x improvement, 20x, in their intelligent digital call routing? And doing it at scale for 1,900 customers of insurance globally, where 80% of G500 insurance companies are being managed by a giant. This is the difference to Ray August and every other futurist. He's actually doing it. Please join me in welcoming Ray to the stage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That introduction will be hard to live up to, but I appreciate it very much. You know, we're very excited to be here with all of you today, talking about insurance and talking about the digital transformation of insurance. And, you know, DXC, we have about 2,000 companies who use our software around the globe to automate their business. But the real interesting thing about us is we're a BPO provider. We are an insurance company within our organizations. In fact, we have 13 million policies that we run on our systems on behalf of our customers who are insurance companies. So every single day, we really understand what insurance companies are doing, we understand what insurance companies think about, and we understand the challenges that insurance companies have by automating their operations on their behalf. And each and every day at DXC, we have 20,000 professionals who come to work with that mission, and that is to automate insurance companies. So it really is an opportunity for us to transform how insurance companies think, but also make our own people more effective, more efficient as they serve insurance companies. And our combined solution really does just that, and I'm excited to talk to you about it. But to talk about insurance companies, you really need to take a step back and understand, what are insurance companies worrying about? What do they think about each and every day? And if you think about insurance, insurance is pretty simple. It's people serving people. It's people who are looking to insure themselves, and they're being served by individuals each and every day. So it's entirely a people business, and it's a business where people are the biggest part of the cost equation. And if you look at what's on the mind of an insurance company, it's how do I get more efficient, more effective operations? How do I grow my business? And how do I really make my business get closer to the customers? And the way they do that is through digital transformation. Now, digital transformation is kind of a topic like, what does it really mean? In the insurance industry, digital transformation is taking all these digital assets and using it to make companies more efficient, more effective, and grow their companies. It's that simple. And the solutions that we have together really put us at the forefront to make that happen. And if you look at insurance companies, what are they focused on? They're really focused on automating the experience in the call center, automating the consumer interaction. Now, I have a list up here of all the things insurance companies are thinking about. And if I put this slide up 10 years ago, it would have been the exact same slide. But with the advent of COVID, with the advent of how people think, it's really become an imperative on how to automate, what companies need to do to get more efficient, get more effective. And there's some really interesting trends that are underway in insurance industry. I'm not going to talk about all these, but one of the biggest is the notion of embedded insurance. So think about when you go out and you book a trip online. There's the opportunity, and you usually get sold, or the opportunity gets sold, trip insurance. Think about when you buy an automobile now, typically in that process, you try to get sold automobile insurance. So the process of embedding insurance into every single activity is really presenting a growth opportunity for insurance companies, and we need to have that digital transformation to make that happen. But so why are companies making the investment in these interactions? It's pretty straightforward. Now, if you look at this slide, in our operation, today people want to be entirely digital, they want to be entirely automated. It's the Amazon generation where people expect to be able to go online, buy a product, serve a product, return a product. And that's what people are accustomed to. But insurance is a different game. Right now, the challenge with insurance is the product is very, very complex. Whether somebody's buying a life insurance policy, whether somebody's buying a homeowner's policy, it's not as simple as going to Amazon and clicking and buying a book or a can of tuna fish. It's a very complex product. So what's happening in the insurance companies today is 80% of the time there's a human interaction involved with that call coming into the call center, 80% of the time. Now think about the last time you called Amazon. When's the last time, if ever, you spoke to a human being? In an insurance company, 8 out of 10 times you're dealing with the individual. And of course, insurance companies aspire to be omni-channel, have personalized orchestration, but it just doesn't happen because of the complexity of the product. It's not a lack of desire by the insurance company, it's the complexity of the product that's being bought and sold. And if you look at the typical insurance company, they're spending a tremendous amount of money in making this happen. Think about the cost of answering calls 80% of the time, the call center cost. And this has been compounded by the trends that we're seeing in the overall industry. Now, COVID has had a dramatic impact to all of us, and the insurance industry is no different. Obviously, there's things like the Great Resignation, but one of the things that's happened in insurance is as people began to think about their own mortality, people went and bought more insurance. They wanted to make sure their insurance was up to date. They wanted to make sure their beneficiaries were up to date. So COVID has had a dramatic impact on not only the workforce, but also the inflow of conversations, the inflow of making sure that my information is up to date so I can provide for my family. And if you think about the millennial generation, a lot's been made about how millennials are digital nomads and they demand a digital experience. Well, in our industry, one of the challenges we're seeing is millennials really don't understand the products that they're buying. The thing about insurance is very infrequently does somebody go out and buy a life insurance policy. Very infrequently does somebody go out and buy a homeowner's policy or an automobile policy or an umbrella policy. It's usually a once a decade type of thing. And so when you have a very complex product and the user is demanding digital, but the product is so complex, it's actually putting a greater emphasis on the telephone right now because they're calling up, because they're confused. They don't know how to handle, they don't know how to navigate. It's extraordinarily complex. And the third trend that we're seeing is, of course, the need for digital, whether it be embedded products, digital communications. The industry is seeing this dramatic need for these digital vehicles. And of course, COVID has done nothing but accelerate that. The way I think about it is COVID accelerated electronic and digital adoption by at least a decade. Whether it be the older generation who was unfamiliar with computers, where now they have to go in and they had to understand it to do grocery shopping, to pay for things, to communicate with their family. It really accelerated digital adoption by at least a decade. And that really put a burden on the insurance company of today. Now, if you think about the impact this had on call centers, it's pretty significant. If you look at the number of calls coming in, the number of calls increased dramatically into these call centers. At the same time during COVID, the number of people available decreased dramatically. So more calls with less people, whether it be the Great Resignation, which had an impact, but also absenteeism was very, 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 very high. The other issues the insurance industry had is that they had to take these centralized call centers and move them to distributed locations. Everybody went to their home. So when you have a highly regulated industry like insurance, what happened was you had to push out policies, you had to push out practices, you had to push out new systems to individuals. And it was very, very difficult. Typically, in a call center, you communicated one way, so you had to go digital, and you had to go to these different individuals. The consumer experience had to be fast and nimble in these insurance companies, and the increased volumes of people looking online, looking for a policy, looking for more information, it was required that it was completely digital, and that was something that wasn't happening in the insurance industry in the past. So we had a phenomenal opportunity. But of course, insurance is a business. It's a business for the insurance carriers. It's a business to the brokers that they serve. And it's a business for DXC to make sure we're as efficient and effective as possible. So we're driving down, looking at how do we drive costs down? How do we drive down the number of calls, at the same time improving customer satisfaction, at the same time improving the interaction with individuals. And I'd like to point out what's happening in the industry. If you look at the insurance industry today, you look at a typical call center and industry, 55% of the time somebody's calling in looking for information. 55% of the time. 35% of the time they're looking to execute some sort of transaction. And 10% of the time they're looking for resolution of an issue. So 80% of the time it's a transaction that should be handled digitally, but it's not. Like I said earlier, 80% of the time today a call's coming to the call center. We see this 35% and 55% as pure opportunity for the industry, an opportunity to better serve their customers, an opportunity to reduce their costs, and an opportunity to cross-sell their solutions. So at DXC, our targets are a little bit different. Using this fantastic tool, Amelia, we have an aspiration to go from 80% calls coming in to only 10% calls that are handled by a human. So think about that. If you go from 80% down to 10%, the cost savings that would incur, the improved customer satisfaction, the improved efficiencies. And if you've ever done anything with insurance, you know there's really two customers. There's the end consumer, who's very important, but there's also the broker-dealer. The broker or the agent really drives the insurance industry. They're the ones communicating with the individuals. And it's extremely important that these individuals have a great experience with the insurance company itself, and they would prefer to go digital, but today it's mostly voice. So we have a phenomenal opportunity in this industry. So let me give you a real life case study. Today we had a situation where we had a company, and the company saw about a 20% increase in volumes of calls coming into their call center. At the same time, they saw an 18% absenteeism rate or reduction in staffing. The other thing that was happening is their IVR was not authenticating people. It was too complex, there were too many different items, and they weren't being authenticated. So what we did is, partnering with Amelia, we looked at the Amelia artificial intelligence solution. We married that with our robust conversational APIs and our solutions, which interface with our robust database, and we brought a system to market. We did it in about 4 months and piloted it with this company. And you heard the stats, a 7-time improvement in the quality of the conversation. We saw the fact that we had a 4 times improvement in the authentication of this, the IVR. It was fantastic. And we saw a 20 times improvement of the, a 20 times improvement in the routing to the right individual. 20 times improvement. Before every one of these calls would have been routed to the wrong individual, it would have meant you had to pick up the phone and talk to them, but even more importantly, it meant the consumer was frustrated. The consumer was frustrated with the interaction. And I've been in this business a long time, and it's safe to say that it's very rare you see this kind of payback with the ultimate solution that will have an opportunity to grow customer satisfaction, whether it be the customer itself, the end consumer, whether it be the agent itself. You can reduce costs for the insurance companies, and you can make us more efficient and more effective. So I really look at it as a triple crown in our business process operation, and we see it as an opportunity where every single person in the solution gets a more efficient, more effective operation. So we're real excited with the partnership with Amelia. We think that it makes a very robust and strong part of our arsenal. It makes us much more efficient and allows us to serve everybody in our platform in a more efficient and effective way. So thank you very much for your time today.